probably 1946 through 49 CJ2A. Pretty decent shape. And it's got some repairs here and there, and yeah, it's got some patches and all that good stuff. Came with a lot of extra parts, set of other tires and rims. A rear seat out of an M151 Mutt that seemed to fit alright. So now I've got all these parts for it. And at the moment it has low compression. It's got 115 here and then 50 on the other three. So what I'm waiting now is a pressure tester so I can see, is it losing compression through the intake exhaust valves or through the piston rings. So I decided, well, since we're waiting for the proper tools, let's see what the transmission looked like. I couldn't get it to shift into reverse or first gear, and that's what she looks like. Absolutely disgusting. Wait till you see the shifter tower. Have you ever been so disgusted at a shifter in your life? Oh my god. Yuck. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is just clean all the crap, at least a little bit. With some brake cleaner. Help to at least wipe out all the dirt, and then what I'm going to do is hit it with some PB Blaster. And the shifter tower does work by itself, so that means that the problem lies within the transmission not shifting, which would be to shift from 4 to 2nd gear. This piece right here, collar, that shifts between this synchro and then the same one on the other side. So what looks like happened is that this Jeep probably went in the mud a little bit, and then it sat outside, and the water runs straight down the shifter tower up here, straight down in the transmission. Just a bad scenario. So I've got is this sliding back and forth on the synchros, all nice and good. And one thing you need to know about doing transmissions is that when they're empty or they don't have any oil up here, in general, even if they're fully rebuilt, they're really hard to move because they need lubrication. I mean, the tolerances in these are tight, so they need oil of some kind. So it'd be a good idea, drain this out, fill it up with gear oil, and then theoretically the Jeep ever runs around, you'd run it around the block a few times, and it would get all the crusty, nasty stuff out of here. You drain it and you put fresh oil in it. Alrighty. Reverse. First. Second. Third. That was a little too easy. Something else is going to go terribly wrong. Okay, so what we're doing with the Jeep is a pressure test to see whether the piston rings, the intake valves, or the exhaust valves are bad in it, causing our compression problems. So what I have here is an aircraft level quality instrument made by these guys. And very, very high quality. I mean, everything about this is really nice. Even the little plate on here is pretty heavy duty. So what we doing, we've got it hooked up to an air compressor. You need at least 90 psi to make this work. So after you got it hooked up, first you need to make sure this is off, and this is twisted all the way to the off position. So now what you do is take this, you pop that up. Now we need to twist this until the gauge reads 80 psi. Alrighty, close that. So that's good. So what we're going to do is put this in the spark plug hole. Now your spark plug has to be at top dead center to do this. And I have our hose connected to #1 cylinder at top dead center. So now we're going to slowly pressurize it. And if there's leaking out of the exhaust, then it's the exhaust valve. If it's leaking out of the carburetor, it's the intake. If it leaks out of the radiator, then it's a head gasket, then it leaks out of the oil filled tube, then it is piston rings. We've got some out of the intake, none here, a lot here. I can hear the ATF I dumped down the cylinders leaking in the exhaust. Yeah, there's a lot coming out here. We've got to do both valves and piston rings. Alright, just listen to this. You can hear the exhaust bubbling. But that is no bueno on the engine. Since we did the pressure test, we found that basically it was leaking out everywhere. I mean, you couldn't just do a piston job. I mean, you had to pull the valves out and work on that. So far I've got all the pistons out. So here are the pistons to the Jeep. And if you've never done it before, it's actually pretty simple. So basically, you drop the oil pan off the engine, and underneath the Jeep, you're gonna find these on the crankshaft. So you just pull 2 bolts off. You pull the end caps off. Now when you're pulling these apart, you need to mark which piston went in which hole and which direction it was facing. So on my box, I have that this is the driver's side that was facing upwards. And this is the rear of the Jeep, and then this is the front of the Jeep, so that'd be number 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I also have these labeled in their correct spots. This is the front of the Jeep, so that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you also want to make sure that the bearings stay with their respected connecting rod. So all these 3 are in their respected ones. This one is sitting in the box. You do not want to mix these up because the engines are put together with a certain tolerance. You don't want to ruin that. Alright, so now that we got all this stuff out, we need to know what size rings we need to buy for them. Alright, so you pull the piston off, and you sand the top down a little bit. Now this one was especially disgusting, but you can just barely see it says 30 over right there. So that means it's bored 30 over stock. Now you need to check all of them, because someone could have bored this one 30 over, this one 20 over, these 2 none over. So luckily all these 3 were 30 over, so I'm going to buy a set of piston rings that are 30 over for all these. Now if you've never done rings before, there are 2 rings on the top area right here, here, and there's a ring right here, so I'm going to replace all those. Alright, we're going to go ahead and pull the manifold off. I've been soaking all these studs in PB Blaster for about 2 days, so they came out pretty easy. There's a lot of ATF inside of here. When I was pouring it down the spark plug holes, trying to free up the rings earlier. Alrighty, so we got the manifolds off. Now one thing that I'm looking for in here is to make sure that there are no cracks in the important places. This is all smooth. These are actually 2 separate manifolds, which is why they've got the slot there. And now this one is missing a chunk out of here, but that's alright because it's still sealed on the inside, so this looks good. Awesome. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and pull the valve cover off. Check it out. No broken springs. No chunks of metal. That's good. We're still gonna go ahead and replace everything in here anyways, because it is disgusting. I mean, by the time you take the valves out and clean them and have them perfectly done, you can just go have new ones. I think they're like $7 or $8 on Quadratech, so we're gonna get new springs, new valves, intake, and exhaust. Just a little bit more work on disassembly on the engine, and the hard part will be over. Alright, now it's time to pull out the valves. And what we've got here is a vintage flathead engine valve spring compressor. You notice that this one is pretty skinny with the jaws right here, whereas a modern one with overhead valve, your bottom jaw would be here and it'd be more like a C clamp. So this one's fully adjustable. It's got screws that move the top one in and out. Same thing with the bottom one. And then you just spin it right here. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna put this down at the bottom of that, just like that. So you're basically pushing on the block and pushing the spring upwards. So then now you just tighten it. Alright, now that we got the valve spring compressor in place, you absolutely do not want to put your fingers in there. One thing you got to do is put rags over the drain holes in the valve area, because you don't want the little retainers that hold the valve spring on to fall out and fall into one of those holes. Now, I have my oil pan removed, so they probably just fell at the bottom. But if you're not planning on pulling the oil pan, like when I was popping out the pistons, you definitely don't want those to fall in there. Now that the valve spring is compressed, we're going to hit the top of the valve, and that's basically going to push the valve past the retainer and the spring, and then that'll loosen up all the parts that hold it together. Alright, so now you can see that the valve is peaked out in the bottom. So it should be loose, and you gotta knock those retainers out with a screwdriver. There's one of the retainers, so there's two of these. They just kind of go in next to each other. So set that there. Now I have all new ones, so it doesn't matter. One valve removed. Alright, now we're gonna go ahead and loosen up the valve spring compressor. Nice thing about this tool is that you can do all this while you're inside your engine bay. So basically you have the valve, you have a valve spring. So the spring sits over the valve like that. You have the retainer, so that goes over like that. So you see that the spring kind of sits on there like that. Now you have the little pieces right here that hold the valve in place. So you can see that it is tapered. So when you have that in, and when the spring is compressed, it slides over like that. And you would have both of them, obviously. Because you can see inside of here how it's tapered. So when this is in the engine under tension, you use the valve spring compressor to kind of compress this upwards. Now this piece will most likely be stuck with it, so that will come up too. And then when it's out and exposed, then you can knock that out, and then that's when you can pull your valve out. Now to get the spring out itself, what you need to do is there's two nuts on here. You need to adjust those all the way down so you have the most amount of room possible between here to pry that spring out. Alright, now that we know what we're doing, we're going to see how quick we can do it. So remember, use your spring retainer, your spring compressor. Alright, now we have to pull out that spring, so loosen the clamp. So now you're going to take 2 1/2-inch wrenches. You're going to put one on that bottom, one up here. Here is my ingenious. So inside the engine block, it's what's called a valve guide. That's basically what the valve slides in and out of inside the block. So now these are kind of a press fit in the block, so you need to pull them out. Well, the cheapest solution for about $10 at your Home Depot, you get a 3/8-inch threaded rod. Now, you're gonna have to drop this down the engine block, like so. You have to thread these nuts on after you drop it in the block. And then on top of the block, around the valve guide, there's kind of an recessed hole that this is going to sit into. So that will sit on the engine block. It's big enough for the valve guide to pull through. You put your washers there, the nut, and basically as you turn the nut, it will pull the valve guide up and out of the engine block. Got my threaded rod, you push it down, you install the nuts, you tighten them together, and you can see the area surrounding the valve, that this piece fits right over. And it will clear the valve when it wants to pull out, and then you're not pushing on top of the head of the engine here. That's the most important. You don't want to gouge this. Alrighty, let's see if she works. Notice a bunch of washers on there to keep them from sinking down in. Situation update on the Jeep. Miserable. So halfway through rebuilding the engine, found a cracked block, one on top, one on the side near the water jacket. So I've got a different engine we're going to swap out, put that one in instead. And then we're just going to part out all the brand new pieces I bought for this one, the rings, Valvetrain, all that good stuff. And I've actually never owned an engine hoist before, nor ever used one. So I got this one off eBay, same one they saw at Rural King, Walmart's website. 220 bucks shipped. Now you can tell it's 220 bucks just kind of by the build quality, the hardware. But I'm going to try it out, see what happens. Alright, so I'm going to pull the engine out of this Jeep, put it over here, then hook up Wrangler to the trailer, pull the trailer close to the garage as we can, take the hoist, take the engine off the trailer over there, put it in the Jeep, unload the Wrangler and the trailer, put them back where they are, then get this engine parted up. Got that? Manual labor. Huh, it's already broke free. Guess we'll give her a jiggle. Yes. That's the only suck thing about not having a forklift. Now this thing barely fits between the tires of the Jeep. Which, it's nice that it does. So how does this work? That should even it out or something. Oh, now we're talking. Alright, the load leveler is key to the engine hoist. So about 35 bucks on eBay, you get the leveler, you get to twist the handle, slides this piece back and forth, and it makes it all nice and straight. The engine actually came up pretty easy, just had to pry up against the firewall to the engine block, and she came out. Let's see if we can pull it out. Awesome. Just when you thought you'd seen it all. So this is the steering linkage. And holding the steering linkage are vice grips because it's cracked in half. But it's okay because there's a backup zip tie and some wiring here. So if you're going down the highway with your family, you would be okay. Alrighty, new engine is in the garage, ready to rock. So this engine came out of a generator, and basically the things you're going to need to do to degenerize an engine to be able to put in the Jeep is pretty simple. Like this one has a governor, I'm actually going to take that off, but there's usually some kind of piece of hose that comes from here and shoots down where the old radiator used to sit. Generator engines, this piece for the radiator points up. Now you can replace yours with the standard straight one. Doesn't matter too much as long as you don't kink the hose. Next, we've got a different carburetor. Or you have to actually spin the carburetor around. Now, some of these generator engines, the carburetor sits sideways, but this one's actually sitting in the correct spot, so we didn't have to change the manifold. You have to remember to put your throttle linkage on here. That's a big one. Flywheel, you're going to want to put the flywheel on that you took out of the Jeep. That way your starter works. You know, make sure your clutch is on there. You have to put your motor mounts in, obviously. And then something you normally don't think about is generator engines actually have an oil pressure gauge that screws right into here. Took that out, put the standard oil fitting here. And other than that, it's pretty simple. We are definitely hurting for space out here. Between the Jeep, the old engine, the Volkswagen parts, tools. But we're going to see if we can plop her in pretty simple. And start getting back to work on putting it all together. Finally. All set up, ready to go. In place. Now we just need to do some miscellaneous little fitting things. Put the carburetor on. New drag link, brake line, and just miscellaneous stuff. And then after that, should be able to fire it up.
Oh, car coming.
Lovely. Oh, they're going the other way. Needs full choke to run it all.
Is that all the way in?
All the way out. It's got no balls, so you gotta keep it rubbed up. Will not fire on its own.
Probably not.
It's running a lot better.
I can't make a turn.
Huh?
I can't make a turn. I can't slow down.
You can't turn the wheel at all?
No, I mean, I was going way too fast to be able to make a turn.
Oh. We can turn around here.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Did it just die?
Yeah.